Good morning, everybody. Welcome to SafeDefend Live. I am Dave Evans with the great Doc Greg Vecchi, the SafeDefend Director of Training. And today he's going to explain to us when is the right time to engage the attacker. Is that accurate, Doc?
That is absolutely accurate, Dave. And it's one of those things where, and I want to preface this here. I want to preface this because we're always talking about, focusing on, situational awareness. We've done a lot on that. We've done a lot on, barricading or evading, and of course escaping. And those are always, better options. The last thing we ever want to do, is try to get into a fight with the offender, because most of the time it's not fair, right? Because he usually has weapons that you don't have. And so I want to make sure that, whoever's listening here, this is not a discussion for first responders, for police. This is not a discussion for anyone that makes that decision to go after the offender themselves. This is for teachers. This is for employees. This is for people that find themselves in their workplace, in their school, in their church, or even in a restaurant or other open or public space. What are some things you can do if you have to engage the offender? So first and foremost, we never try to engage the offender. We want to leave that is a special skill set, and it is completely outside of this conversation. So this does not apply to police and first responders. What I want to kind of cover is kind of like the situation when you find yourself in these attack situations. First of all, you don't have the initiative, so you are automatically in a response mode, right? And so you're already behind the curve in terms of your ability to be quick enough or to be effective enough against an attack that you didn't expect, right? It's just like you're going about your business, you have no idea what's going on, and then you hear a gunshot, right? And then you make a decision. You try to escape, maybe you try to evade, but let's say that you lock down, right? And then somehow the attacker discovers that you're in the room, that you're locked down, and then what do? Or if you're out running and you run into unexpectedly, a second attacker or whatever, and it's an ambush situation. These are the situations we're talking about. And this obviously can be, in school and at the restaurant or wherever. If you wouldn't mind, Dave, if you could put up that PowerPoint.
Coming up right now.
Thank you. Okay. So for the law enforcement people or military guys and women who have, had any sort of, fight training or, any sort of combat training or defensive training, this is not going to be something new, but I think it's something that I want to kind of introduce to the people that aren't in that space or have never been in that space. This is a very great way, actually, of explaining why what we're suggesting is the best approach when dealing with an attacker. Okay, first and foremost, this is called the OODA loop, and it stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. It was put together. One of your colleagues years ago, Dave, John Boyd, he's famous for this. He was an Air Force colonel. Yep. And he put this together in a military context, but it's been used and continues to be used in all different ways because it's so explanatory. And the way it works is, we had talked about, what we do here at SafeDefend is that we focus on a couple things, right? We always look at it from the standpoint of, how the offender is going to act, right? We do it based on that. And then also, whatever we're doing, can we do it when we're scared, when that body alarm response is in, right? And we try to use those as our guideposts or principles for our training and our approaches. And the entire SafeDefend system fits within that, right? But when we're talking about, the OODA loop, we're kind of just talking about human beings in general. So we can forget about the offender as what type of offender he is. If anyone makes a decision to do something, an action, everyone goes through this procedure, right? And it's very simple. So I'll put it in a kind of an example of playing catch. Okay, if I approach you and I've got a ball in my hand, okay, and you see the ball and then I take the ball and I put it back and go this way and let go of the ball, then you're probably gonna catch it, right? That's a common thing, or you might avoid it, whatever your decision. So what happens in that situation from you is that you're reacting to me, right? So kind of like when I start an attack, if I was the bad guy and started the attack, you have to react to me. You don't have a choice. So first and foremost, you're kind of behind the power curve, or you're at a disadvantage from the very beginning, right? Now, if we go back to the ball example, what observe means you say, oh, there's a person, he's got something in his hand. Oh, that looks like a ball. Okay, and then we orient. Well, what's he doing? Oh, he's moving that ball back. That makes sense to me. I think he's probably going to throw it. And if he decides to throw it, if I think he's going to throw it, I'm going to make a decision to catch it. And then I act, right? And then that's what happens in every decision cycle. Okay. If you're in a vehicle and you see a child walk out in front of you, right? Like a ways away, where you observe it and think, oh, what's that? And you say, oh, it's a kid. Oh, he's walking out. Oh, I need to brake. And then you make a decision and you slow down. Okay. And that's your action. The attackers do this. They've already, the difference is that when the gunshot goes off, when you are in the situation and the attack happens, he's already made the decision, and all you hear is the action. And so from that action, you got to go still through a whole nother OODA loop to decide on your next approach, right? If you have trained to where it's a conditioned reflex, right, where you've gone through drills and things like this, when you see or hear the gunshot or the threat or perceive the threat, you basically completely short circuit your own OODA loop and just immediately act, because your decision is already pre-programmed in you, right? And so that's kind of ultimate what we want to get to, but that's unlikely for most people. And so what we have to understand is that when we are dealing with action and reaction, the attacker always has the initiative and has always made the decision, and is oftentimes acted before we know what's going on, right? And even for us to react to something, Force Science Institute has done a ton of research on this, that from the time that you see a stimulus to your response, you still got a 0.25 to 0.31 seconds delay, right? So you're always behind the power curve. This is why when we are talking about this in terms of offenders and engaging the offender, what we're doing when we attack the offender is we're interrupting his OODA loop. We are taking the initiative back and making him react to us, therefore giving us time to effectively deal with the situation. Okay. So when we are let's say that we are in a workplace or a school, and you hear a gunshot and you decide that I'm going to barricade. So you lock the door, okay? You close the door, you lock the door, you cover the windows, you turn the lights out, you move heavy stuff in front of it, and you move off to the side, right? And hopefully he's going to go away. But let's say that he hears you. Let's say someone didn't turn their phone off, and he decides that, oh, I'm going to go in there. And somehow he breaches or crosses the threshold. And so this is what we work a lot on is, when do we attack? Well, most of the time, now, again, this is probabilities. It's not always 100%, but most of the attacks, if they do happen, it's going to be while you're hiding in a room and you can't go anywhere and you're kind of trapped. So we're looking at thresholds. And so a threshold is anything like a window, okay, or a door. And the threshold around that door or the threshold around that window, if any sort of body part or gun muzzle or knife tip or whatever goes through that, okay, that is our cue to practice, so that we immediately know, attack that body part, attack that weapon, get out of the way of things, right? And so through training that, we are making it so we don't have to go through the observe and orient phase as much, because we've conditioned ourselves to react to that situation. So we're more in a decision act, which makes our response faster. Now, here's why it works against the attacker. Okay. He has the gun, he's got the knife. His intent is to come in and kill and destroy everybody in the room, for example. Okay. When he crosses that threshold to go in, he's expecting to win. And we know this. And so when you cause him pain or cause destruction on his body, that makes him stop. And now he is now resetting his OODA loop because things aren't going well as he expected. So now he goes in there, you get smacked with a baton and you break his hand. Okay. He's now back in the OODA loop and saying, oh, ow, what just happened? And now what am I going to do? Or maybe I need to put the gun in the other hand. By that time, he's reacting to you, and then a continuous assault will almost always win the day as long as you don't give him back the initiative, because you're making him react to you instead of you reacting to him. And really applies across the board. Police use this in gunfighting. Police use this, but martial arts guys use it in self-defense. And teachers and everyday people can use the same process and approach to protect themselves if they find themselves barricaded in a room. Okay. So that's what we're trying to do, is cause pain or destruction to take that initiative from the offender, make him react to you, make him reset his OODA loop, and while he's going through all that, we take him out. And that's essentially what we're doing. Again, last ditch effort. This is not something that you can really plan for. I mean, you can prepare for it, but you never know when it's going to happen. So it's got to be practiced, and it's got to be drilled, and you have to have an understanding of why it works. Now, let's talk about weapons. Okay, so it's unlikely and never, having a firearm may or may not work for you, but almost always it's not going to work for a teacher or for a school or for a workplace for a number of reasons. First and foremost, that in order to effectively use a firearm, you got to be trained and be really, really good at it, right? With lots of practice. And most people, unless you do that for a living, okay, you're an armed worker, that's simply almost always a bad idea. So what do? Well, we look at other weapons that still can fit this scenario of causing pain and destruction, reset his OODA loop, get him to react to you so that you can take him and control him until the police arrive, right? Again, that critical gap, okay? And so what we do then is it's SafeDefend, okay? One of the things we do, and the purpose of the protection piece of the system, is to provide the best tools available based on insurance recommendations, based on security, things like this. So we look at things like a baton, a retractable baton, okay? Steel, if you hit any sort of bones on the arm or especially the hand, you're going to break bones, and that's going to interrupt his OODA loop and give you the advantage, give you the initiative. Pepper spray, gel pepper spray that won't blow back on a windy day, right? Or if there are fans on, right? Going for the eyes works extremely well. Is it going to kill the person? No, but it's going to interrupt his thought process so that then he can now react to your thought process and actions versus the way it was. Again, you're causing discomfort, you're causing pain, and you're causing destruction. And that's what triggers that to happen. The strobe light, all other stuff is all really good too for this. So that's why we have the safety cabinets, and that's why we put those in certain areas that are most likely places you're going to try to evade or lock down. And that gives you then an opportunity then to have better weapons, better control, better safety over them. They're going to be there, they're not going to disappear because they were in a bucket, right? Before, like a lot of people put in, and you're going to have that capability. Now, not everyone's going to have the SafeDefend system. So then what do? Well, we have to talk about improvised weapons. And this is a case where it's best, if you've got control of the space, to pre-stage your weapons, your improvised weapons, and it can be anything. The three categories that we kind of look at for improvised weapons are things that can stab or slice, things that cause blunt force trauma, bludgeons, okay, and scalding, or things like, hot coffee and things like this you can throw in their eyes or burn them with, or things like this, right? So hot coffee is an improvised weapon. The ceramic coffee cup, if you hit them, it's a blunt weapon. If you break it, now it's a stabbing or cutting weapon, right? Having tools, regular tools in there, using the fire extinguisher, all the stuff that most people have looked at. And so what it requires also is that when you're dealing with engaging the offender, you also have to look at things a little bit differently. So this coffee cup, okay, my little SafeDefend coffee cup here, right, works really well for drinking coffee, but it also works really good for knocking someone in the head if you need to do it, or smashing their fingers, against a metal surface or a wood surface, right? So we have to start looking at things a little bit differently. And if you can pre-stage it and drill it, and just find your best equipment, best practices you can, you're going to have what we call a fighting chance on this. And the last thing I'd want to cover on this is that you also got to have a plan. Everyone should have a role or a job in the event that they cross in the threshold into the room that you're there. So people should focus on body parts. Okay, this is not a fair fight. Okay, this is a fight that requires stopping the attacker and using deadly force if necessary. The trigger always is reasonable belief of death or serious bodily injury. That will allow you then to use anything up to include deadly force to stop the attacker. But you have to remember, once he's stopped, you have to stop using the deadly force. That's the only caveat there. But getting back to roles, getting back to jobs, everyone has to have a job. So maybe someone's going to have the job of anything to do on the right arm or hand. That's going to be what they're going to attack, whether or not it's got a weapon in it. Okay. Someone else's job is the left arm and the left hand. Maybe someone else's job is the eyes. Okay. Or the testicles, right? Because again, this is not a fair fight. And so once you do decide to attack and you have your job to do, you continue to do that job and focus on that right arm or the testicles or the eyeballs or the kneecap or whatever it is your job is. And you keep focusing on that body part with your improvised weapon or your SafeDefend weapons until that person is subdued. And again, this is last resort stuff. But it does work. It works very, very well, but you have to really understand what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it, and why distractions, you becoming the ambusher is absolutely critical for you to take the initiative and disrupt or interrupt his OODA loop, his action that he's doing, that he's expecting to work, and then you coming back and making him react to you, therefore giving you a good fighting chance to survive. And people that do this, it works very, very well. What doesn't work is when people are trying to do the right thing and they rush an attacker out in the open or things like this. We've seen this time and time again in a number of different cases. Most recently in Maine, the shooter in Maine, one of the people that the offender killed, was someone who decided to try to attack him. And the attacker was shot and killed. And so, again, these are all personal decisions. But what I'm talking here is, best practices, because the idea here is to keep, number one, yourself safe and the people around you safe if you can. Okay. And once you're safe, try to notify. And now you got this critical gap between the start and the end of the attack, where you can do one of three things. Okay. You can try to escape, you can try to evade, or if necessary, engage, and not in that order, because at any point you might have to do any of those three things. And so as we go into, the Christmas holidays and things like this, even though we may not be at work, we may not be at school, we're going to be at functions, we're going to be at parties, we're going to be at restaurants, we're going to be, relaxed and things like this. And so just a little situational awareness when you go into your favorite restaurant. What do I have with me? If I don't have something on me, then what do I have around me? A fork and knife is really a good thing. And I always try to order steak because then I get the sharp steak knife. So that's about it. I just wanted to cover that. We don't talk a lot about engaging, and there's a lot of confusion out there. And I think it's really important to understand really what goes into the physiology of reacting to an attack, because you can use that to your favor if you understand it. Military and police have been doing it for years, so why not your average person to help them, keep themselves and family safe?
So in a summary today, Doc, great lesson today for everybody. In a summary for today, engage is a last resort. The intent is to interrupt the attacker's OODA loop and go for soft, fleshy spots on their body if you're going to attack, and make it an indirect attack. That's not necessarily a direct attack in an open space, right? Attacking an open space puts you at risk if you don't know what you're doing. If that's the last resort, you got to do what you got to do. Get it? I get it. But, look at ways to evade and escape first. Engage is the last resort. Is that fair, Doc?
That's absolutely. Couldn't say it better myself, Dave.
All right. Thanks, Doc. What another great meeting with SafeDefend today. Thank you for your support. We look forward to seeing you next week with that. Doc and Dave, we are out of here.
Have a good week.